We sometimes tend to focus so much on the trees that we don't see the forest. Let me summarize, I think, the situation with 3 words: massive, systematic, and dangerous. Along with a number of UN special rapporteurs, I have recently expressed grave and growing concerns regarding the deteriorating situation of religious freedom and human rights in India. We have, in the last decade, for example, issued numerous communications and press releases, communications being allegations of human rights violations that are raised through diplomatic channels to the concerned governments. They show a steady and alarming erosion of fundamental rights, particularly for religious and other minorities, when we reviewed communications from about 2011 to today. By last year, 2022, almost all of them involved grave allegations of denial of fundamental rights, particularly targeting religious minorities. And for example, from the 12th of May 2020 to just a few months ago, May 2023, we had about 46 communications and an estimated 20 press releases involving India, and most of these involving minorities, the vast majority of these. The most recent example, the most recent communication that we issued is perhaps symptomatic. On the 4th of September, myself and 18 other colleagues expressed our alarm about reports of serious human rights violations in Manipur, including alleged acts of sexual violence, extrajudicial killings, forced displacement, and other ill treatment, where the victims were from the predominantly Christian Kuki or Kukai minority last May. Now, there are dry statistics. I could say there were 160 persons reportedly killed by mid-August. Thousands of homes and hundreds of churches have been burnt down, and some of you will have heard of a video which circulated on social media of 2 women from the Christian Kuki community being paraded naked, beaten, then brought to a field and allegedly gang raped. Let's go to the field. Let's go on the ground and perhaps describe more accurately what happened. There was inaction from authorities until this video caught the international attention. I saw that video, and what it showed was hatred directed against women because they were considered a threat, unworthy, less human, because they belonged to a despised religious and ethnic minority. That's why they were raped. That's why they were beaten. It was only after the shock and outcry and pressure from the outside that men from the Hindu majority were finally arrested and charged. By the way, these individuals for months circulated freely and behaved with complete impunity for months, despite the highly visible, public, and horrific nature of what occurred. And this, unfortunately, is not an isolated incident. We receive multitudes of reports of attacks, rapes, lynchings of members of religious minorities. We also have reports of national, state, and local religiously discriminatory policies and legislation targeting, well, amongst others, and you've mentioned some of these, Chair, religious conversion, interfaith relationships, the killing of cows, the wearing of hijabs, and other practices that restrict and prohibit religious beliefs or practices of minorities mainly. And all of these make a mockery of freedom of religion and non-discrimination guarantees for these religious and other minorities. Human rights defenders, lawyers, and journalists face harassment, surveillance, detention, and worse sometimes under the, as mentioned previously, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. You also know that non-governmental organizations have also been targeted and in some cases closed under the Foreign Contributions Regulation Act and also other legislation. Now let me repeat, India risks becoming, in my opinion, based on the information I've received and the allegations we've received, it risks becoming one of the world's main generators of instability, atrocities, and violence because of the massive scale and gravity of the violations and abuses targeting not exclusively, but mainly religious and other minorities, such as Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, and others. It's not just individual or local. It is systematic and a reflection of, well, I guess the best description is religious nationalism. There is a discriminatory citizenship determination process in Assam, which many of you will know about in detail, but potentially also other regions of the world. Assam is a model being looked at very closely in other parts of India, and this we should be very concerned with. But this process could lead to millions being denied citizenship, and mainly, not exclusively again, but mainly from the Muslim minority community. And this process has to be seen also in the light of the 1999 Citizenship Amendment Act, which provides a fast track to citizenship for individuals unless you're a Muslim. Now, there's a religious test here, which does not sit well with democratic values and fundamental international human rights. Now, there are fears expressed by many that this may be part of an effort to create a religious and discriminatory test for citizenship. The disenfranchisement of millions also, again, mainly Muslims because of their religion, has occurred through the revocation in 2019 of the special status of autonomy of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, under the direct control of the central Indian government, this really means that the local elected bodies have been discarded, and the right of political participation and representation of, once again, mainly Muslim and other minorities in Jammu and Kashmir has effectively been stripped away. And they've lost many of their previous political rights. A study noted recently that there has been a staggering increase, a 786% increase in hate crimes against minorities between 2014 and 2018. It is also widely acknowledged that hate speech and content inciting violence against religious minorities in social media is widespread, increasing, vitriolic, and involving incitement to violence and even calls to genocide. And not always, but we could say generally, these are largely left unchallenged by state authorities. Official silence is too often occurring over violent attacks and rhetoric, and this is encouraging majority nationalist groups to even more brazen violence with a religious tint. We must never forget that. The violence in Manipur is also a warning of the dangers of inaction. The danger is that left alone, many more Manipurs may erupt. India ranks as 8th country with the highest risk of mass killings. This is extremely dangerous, as I noted earlier. And this is mainly because of the targeting of religious and other minorities, and is symptomatic of large-scale scapegoating and dehumanizing and instrumentalization of Muslims and other religious others that could lead to a slide towards horrific atrocities. And lest we forget, there cannot be peace and stability without justice, and that is the fundamental principle on which the Universal Declaration of Human Rights rests. There is, of course, much more that could be said, time permitting, but I have a written summary, if you will, of the information that I've mentioned, which I can share with the commissioners if this would be of any assistance. Thank you very much again for the honor and the privilege of being before this distinguished commission. Merci beaucoup. Is an example of this. It was because of international attention, and I would say pressure, that you have a number of men who have committed the atrocities and the alleged rape of the Kuki women. It was only after this international focus appeared that state authorities in India actually proceeded to the arrest of those who are